So Columbine is 1999. Oh my God,
was it?
so literally millennium.
Yeah. Apparently, 20 million Americans feel they are actively preparing for the end of the world.
That does not surprise me. Your country is obsessed. This online world where we're being pushed further and further into this sort of half existence. I call it junk food life.
Well, you put it
worry
like
about
that, and like I'm ready for the end of the world, man. I am ready. Hi, I'm Christina Rhodes.
And I'm Tempest Rose.
We are two millennial women 4 decades in.
We're revisiting the culture that made us, with a little more hindsight.
And a lot less bullshit.
We've made our own rules.
Built our own spotlights.
And we're here to speak our minds without playing dumb.
And without playing nice.
I cannot drink strawberry daiquiris for the rest of my life. If you were only allowed one drink forever, what would it be?
A pina colada.
Oh, really?
Feels like a meal. And I feel anytime you drink a pina colada, the sunshine could just be all around you.
It's true. It's like when you put suntan lotion on at home to feel like you're on holiday.
I've never done that before.
Oh, it's such a, I'm literally going to hate the way I'm going to phrase this, mental health hack. If you put suntan lotion on, because it smells like being on holiday, when it's like gloomy and miserable outside, it instantly gives you a little boost.
I'm going to send you a carton of pina colada cans. It feels much less sad.
Okay.
Right.
It's the end of the world. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing, obviously, you and I turned 18, give or take. I was born in 82. You were
84.
So 16 and 18, two significant ages, in the year 2000, the dawn of the new millennium. And I think that it's almost, I don't know, like it feels a long time ago, because it is. But I don't know if it's possible, again, for younger people who didn't go through this to really understand like the impact on the psyche of the world, that we were going into a whole different century. It was massive when we were growing up.
Yeah, no, it completely was. And there was such panic, just absolute panic. I remember, it was televised as well. Like all the grocery stores were being, you couldn't buy toilet paper. Everybody,
really?
like taking all the cans out. Oh my God. Yes.
Really?
In December, at the end of December.
It's not like that here.
Oh, really? No. Welcome to America, babe.
Wow.
Frenzy.
Yeah.
Frenzy. People absolutely believed that the banking systems would go down, which was interesting because also, obviously it was electronic by that point, but, fintech wasn't quite what it is today. So I feel like it would have a bigger impact if the cloud went down, which it might, which we will get to. But
another horror I didn't know about.
But yeah, no, it was a mass hysteria. That's what it was.
So for those of you who don't know, there was this thing called the millennium bug. Now, I don't know whether some of that will be what you're talking about and how much of that was just general worry about going into the new century. But here, the millennium bug was definitely a thing. And it was based on this idea, correct me if I'm not explaining this properly because I'm not a tech person and I definitely wasn't at the age of 18, that computer codes were written not in like 2001, but just in double digits. So when it went to 99 and then it went to 00, it kind of messed up the system.
Well, that was a concern.
Yes.
Which it then turned out, which I feel is like a life lesson working with AI. The computer just figured it out.
That's not true.
Really?
Yes.
But the world didn't melt down.
I had to look this up for this episode, okay? So this was like such a big thing at the time, wasn't it? Like planes were going to fall out the sky, people on life support in hospitals were going to die, the banks would fail, people would lose their life saving. It was pure hysteria. And then nothing happened. So we all just sort of forgot about it. To the point where I was like, oh, obviously that was just a load of hysteria over nothing. And I read this tweet a few months ago where somebody was replying to somebody who had said something like what I've just said. And they were like, no, it didn't happen because people worked for hours and hours, like day and night for months and months and months to solve the problem in the code or whatever it be called. And so I looked it up, and that is in fact true.
Oh, wow. All right.
Poor selfless individuals who never got any recognition.
I recognize you now. I will send a carton of pina coladas to your house too if you tell me who you are.
Pina coladas for everyone who saved us from the millennium bug. But I like you, I just thought it was a hoax. Turns out it wasn't.
Well done then, because the world did just forget and we moved on. Much like perhaps COVID, which is the next kind of real, what was that, be 20 years on? That was the next worldwide mass hysteria moment that I can remember. There probably were ones in between.
Oh, Lord, I can't talk about COVID yet. We're going to have to wait for our sextennial, whatever, in our 60s, whatever that's called, episodes where we look back on the 2020s, because I can't cope with COVID. For those of you who know, I did a whole podcast during COVID and just after, and I don't want to think about it again, like, for a long time. So yeah, millennium bug, that wasn't true. But were you worried about it?
No, I might paint myself in a less than wonderful light in this moment, but my only two like really strong memories were watching the television, thinking that everyone is a moron. It's not
so nothing's changed.
Right. Not overly different for the world today. And that my mom had really kindly bought me a pair of kitten heels that said Y2K and Swarovski crystals on the back of them. I know. And that I was obsessed, and I couldn't wait till New Year's Eve when at the age of 16, I thought somehow I was going to meet somebody magical and would be living some weird adult life where I didn't live at home. And well, that's a whole other conversation. But
yes.
Yeah. So all I cared about was my Y2K lavender kitten heels. And
sounds so cool.
And how everyone else was an idiot. Do you remember where you were and how you felt?
No, I remember it being a big thing in the news, and I'll be honest, I can't actually remember how I felt. I suppose we were so much less obviously impacted by technology then. Like now it's very obvious. If something is happening in tech, it affects everything. Like if I lose my phone, my entire life, my business is run through it. We just didn't have that then. So it was definitely nothing I could do about it at all. And it felt much more removed from the reality of day-to-day life, I think. And also because we didn't consume news on our phones. Like we'd hear people talking about it. You had to turn on the actual news program or look at the newspapers. It's not like nowadays where you have the screaming running update literally in your hand 24 hours a day of everything that's happening in the world.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, you could sort of choose to engage with it or not. But yeah.
And we had more important things to think about when we were 16/18, such as diamante footwear.
Exactly. There will be an end of the world. At least I'm going to look cute when it happens.
Exactly. What were you doing on New Year's Eve?
I think that year, I don't remember. New Year's Eve is also my brother's birthday. So we would have probably been spending it together as a family. But I think we were going on holiday as well. So yeah, so that was what I did. I do remember now, we were on holiday and we went for a very fancy dinner, and I had my first molten chocolate cake. And
this is a very specific memory for somebody who says that she can't really remember.
And then, my like cute little kitten heels. And then that was it. Did not meet my Prince Charming on holiday, but met him 45 years later, so it was fine.
45 years? How old are you?
102.
I thought so.
But nowadays, I looked up a couple statistics before we entered this conversation, and apparently 20 million Americans feel they are actively preparing for the end of the world.
That does not surprise me. Your country is obsessed.
Who's going to win at the end, That's all I got to say. And apparently, and the prepping industry, not shockingly probably, is on the rise. And apparently by 2030, it's going to be a $2.46 billion industry.
Really?
Which I actually think that seems quite small, given that prepping also includes helping the super wealthy build some crazy shit.
Do you think that's included? Because I think some of them will be quite secretive about how they spend their money in that area.
True. That's probably true. Yeah.
I hadn't even taken all of that on board. The super wealthy prepping industry is vast, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is, well, here's a question. How legitimate do you think it is?
I'm always in two minds of this because on one hand, I'm like, absolutely, we should all be stockpiling. Listen, I stockpile cigarettes whenever I leave the EU, and I am not a smoker. I might smoke 1 pack a year. And when I forget to take a contraceptive pill, I keep it in a box because that is going to be my currency when society falls apart. Cigarettes and contraceptive pills. People are buying crypto. People are buying gold bars. I'm hoarding microgynon. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do think there's a part of me that froze my eggs as future-proofing, just in case we're in some strange world where my 8 little eggs that survived are going to be valuable to me or to people I can give them to.
I thought you just wanted to repopulate the world with little yous.
Well, no, I missed the boat on that one, unfortunately.
Mini lizards everywhere.
World would be a better place. And look a lot cuter, too. I just like to say, kitten heels everywhere.
Pina coladas for everyone. Oh, millionaire, well, billionaire, I suppose, really prepping industry stuff makes me so depressed.
I'm sure that there is an ark being built somewhere. But, you know, in Noah's Ark, 2 of everything was supposed to be brought on board. But I don't feel that's what the future arcs are going to be.
Do you think that prepping has a bigger resonance and this like idea of the end of the world in America because of the big evangelical Christian tradition?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably. I mean, I think there's a lot of things around American culture that naturally lend themselves into prepping. The evangelical side is definitely one of them. I mean, I went to high school with kids whose parents bought them big SUVs. It'd be like one person driving around in their backpack in a car that fits 12 people and is a total gas guzzler. And if you ask them about, the planet or anything else, their answer is just, well, we're all going to die before by the end of my lifetime. The end of the world's coming, so like it doesn't matter.
Really?
Yeah.
And what did they...
Seriousness.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say these people weren't maybe clearly not, given the vehicle, that interested in climate change and environmentalism. So where did they think the end of the world was coming from?
Oh, I mean, I don't actually remember that, but just that they're convinced it was coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like it is, but then I think every generation probably feels like. So I have no benchmark for what is a reasonable level of we are living in the end times versus everybody thinks the society is about to fall apart any second.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. And I think it'd be difficult to figure that out because it's obviously so subjective and personal too. But I think there's a lot more going on in this moment that could legitimately lend itself to the end of the year or end of the days, really, over maybe 100 years ago.
Yes.
I mean, unless you believe that God is going to strike us down.
Sometimes I wish he'd hurry up. I definitely remember this weird mix with the millennium because it was all so like 90s culture had a lot of new ageism in it, like a lot. And we're going to do another episode on culture, but I think there was this big resurgence of paganism, of new ageness, of alternative religions, which I suppose ties in with this whole millennial idea of the self-esteem, self-worth, so self-help culture of self-esteem, of manifestation, of believing in yourself, that we were entering this new millennium. It was supposed to be the age of Aquarius. We were going to enter this new frequency. So some of that was really positive. Like when I look back on some of the stuff that I wrote at the time, it's kind of full of this idea of like hopefulness and being on the cusp of something that was like bigger than yourself, and this idea of like shared love. And I don't think that's just an age thing. Obviously, you would hope you are more optimistic the younger that you are. But I think young people are actually quite nihilistic and pessimistic at the moment, which is indicative of the culture, of course, this idea of like scarcity and anxiety and culture ending, the end of history. And we were definitely full of this idea of like, we're turning into adults, and that was super exciting. And we were kind of believing that like humanity might come together and that we could have this kind of, it was a bit like a blank slate in a way. And the internet was new. We didn't realize what a fucking hellscape it would become. We still had this idea that like it would be shared knowledge and communication, and it would be so great, and authoritarian regimes would fall, and like the sharing of like the resources of humanity. It was really hopeful in that way. And then in other ways, it was scary what was happening. And so I suppose it's sort of the elephant in the room that we haven't quite got to. Like 9/11 happened in 2001, and that was hugely impactful, certainly, in America and in Europe. We can only talk to our own experience, obviously, growing up. And that had a sort of end of the world quality to me then. So it was, I feel like it was this massive like fusion of these two polarizing ideas that we were just on the cusp of something different, and it could be amazing, or it was literally the end of everything.
Wait, sorry, can you talk to me about how you felt that 9/11 felt like the end of days?
So I conveniently have my writings from the time.
Amazing.
And yeah, it was really funny. I went back and read them. So I had this, like when I was younger, I used to write a lot, and sometimes I kept like a diary. But during the year 2000 and 2001, I kept what was more kind of like a fusion of like free form writing, like art books, sketchbooks. So some of it is like more poetic than rather the mundaneness of what I was doing in everyday life, how I felt about stuff. So I have an entry from the 16th of September, 2001. And I had forgotten. I remember it being impactful, obviously. I think everyone at our age would remember where they were when 9/11 happened, some more than others. Like you're going to talk about being in America, but even here, like everyone in the UK, I'm sure will be like, oh yeah, I remember exactly when 9/11 happened. It was so impactful. So I remember that element, but I'd forgotten how anxious it made me feel, and like fuzzy-headed and nervous. And it was this whole idea, I suppose, that we had to an extent been living in this little kind of bubble. Again, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have social media, none of this stuff, but we were just getting on in our own little lives. And this was at the end of our childhood when 9/11 happened. And then this huge terrorist attack happens in the country that is the most powerful country in the whole world. I don't think you can underestimate at that time America's dominance. We are moving into a much more multipolar world, but that was not the case in the 90s and noughties at all. And to see like the Twin Towers, this kind of American dominance destabilized was destabilizing. It was like looking at a movie screen. And I think weirdly at the time, there was a lot of kind of like domestic terrorism in like movies and the zeitgeist. So I felt that it's burnt onto my brain, and it was just this understanding that the world was much bigger than our own little cosseted pocket.
I think that's a really good way of phrasing it, because I would agree that I felt that way too. But it didn't feel, I mean, it was interesting because obviously it was the first, sort of like attack on American soil in that level since Pearl Harbor, basically.
Yeah.
And, I remember I was growing up in California, and I remember my dad waking me up and letting me know that it had happened. But I didn't have, friends or family members that worked there, though I did know, some of my friends did. And, we had like an all-school assembly, and it was a big thing. And I remember, but one of my best friends from childhood went to a boarding school on the East Coast, which I think I've told you the story before, but it was horrendous. They brought everybody together for an all-school assembly to watch the news live. Now, a huge portion of the kids who went to that school, their parents worked at the Twin Towers. And I just can't imagine being them or being in that room when you were literally watching the plane take down the second tower live, which means that any hope you just had that your parents had made it out, unless they had called in sick that day, has just evaporated. Maybe horrendous. And I think there's, but even being all the way in California, it still obviously had a huge impact. And, our cafeteria, went to a private school, right? That wasn't required to do this by law or anything, but they changed the that the French fries for lunch were called freedom fries. And not that we were like fighting the French, but just it became this really, it was interesting because I think when you said that it felt like the sort of end of days, it definitely felt that in some ways as an American, but it also felt like we went on the attack and the aggressive stance immediately. And there was a sort of like a few days, maybe even a few weeks where it felt like there's this sort of fog that everyone was in of just nationalism. That everybody was like buying into being American, no matter what else you had disagreed about before. You were American, and we were all united against whatever enemy had done this. And I mean, I love a conspiracy theory, but I do genuinely believe that it's just too convenient. It's a topic for another podcast, but yeah, I mean, it was interesting that however it happened, it definitely created in America a feeling of real bizarre unity for a moment.
I mean, that's totally understandable. My husband is a big fan of saying, we'll never unite on planet Earth until the aliens come.
Yes, that's right.
Well, yeah, it's the sense of like there is an enemy that is bigger than whatever struggle is going on between you. I think part of the scariness was not just that it happened, but again, America being the most powerful military in the world, like the world was forever changed. And we went to war. I mean, we didn't go to war, but people, there was a massive war. It went on for fucking years. And just knowing like there is no way America is not going to retaliate to this. So I like that sort of foreboding as well, like is part of that changing everything. Sorry, I didn't want to skip past like what you say is very impactful. Like I cannot imagine being those pupils because it was that thing, wasn't it? Like there was one tower alone, but then the second tower, and then the Pentagon, is that right? Where the people on the plane actually took down the hijackers, is that right? So the plane still crashed, but they diverted it away from the Pentagon. I mean, the heroism of that, knowing you're going to die anyway. So it was sort of this like, here, I cannot imagine how it would have felt there, especially if you're involved. There's endless waves of crashing horror. What's going to come next? What's going to come next? What's going to come next? With things that, again, seemed like out of a film.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like it wasn't that long after that I then started to question quite a lot around, what was real with the government and where the sort of motives, which I suppose probably every generation does to some degree. Obviously people protesting against Vietnam and really taking issue with governments when they choose to go to war, particularly if you're being forced into it, which thankfully we don't have a draft anymore. But yeah. Oh, jeez. deep in thought there, then boom.
Yeah. I have a theory because you can tell me is a load of absolute shit, but we obviously have some pre-discussion when we talk about the topics that we're going to bring to the podcast. And so you've told me before about your feelings of like, was this a bit of an inside job? That is not an unusual theory. All of us have read conspiracy theories around the Twin Towers, and some of them are, kind of hard to disprove. I'm sure there's whole Netflix documentaries on them. Like, this is not a controversial opinion in the least. But I sometimes wonder whether it's actually, go with this, because this does sound counterintuitive to begin with. It's more comforting in a weird way to believe that forces within your own society through greed, which is something that we understand, and wanting to kind of manipulate the people and fund this war that some people had seemingly wanted for a long time, had kind of contributed to the circumstances by which this happened, than to believe that a group of people on the other side of the world hate you so much that they would, with seeming ease, plan such an atrocity that took place within a country with the most amount of money for international, like, spying, I can't think of the proper word, you know what I mean? Like, espionage, all of the access to all of the data, everything you would ever need to keep your country safe, and still it did not stop these hijackers. And I wonder if that's not scarier in a way.
With the espionage element?
Well, the fact that despite all of the power and wealth of America, they couldn't stop this attack.
Yeah. I think that that is certainly, if that is true, then that is certainly, yeah, like, of course. And I think that that's what a lot of Americans got, and a lot of people got really terrified by, is this concept that, yeah, you seem to have all this power, you feel so confident, yet actually, how safe are you really?
Yeah.
No matter how much it seems that way.
That's quite a scary thing to get your mind around.
Mm. But I think that exists still today, right? I mean, there's just been cases of finding spies here in the UK, and there's question marks around, even with Facebook and with Instagram, and how much fake news there is around various things that have happened over the last 8 years. Who's actually controlling that, and how much say do we really have in what's happening?
Yes.
How in control are we actually?
Oh, totally. I suppose what I mean is it much more terrifying to look your own vulnerability in the face? Especially for an American psyche that has been so brought up on the idea of American dominance. It's not like the terrorists came from the richest country in the world operating at a technological level far superior. In lots of ways, it was a very analog kind of atrocity.
Yeah.
There's nothing magical, hugely technological about it. It's literally just long-term infiltration and planning.
Yeah.
I think that's terrifying. I can understand why people really would want to find a reason to reframe that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. No, I hear what you're saying, for sure. But I think also there is a big part of American culture, and there's lots of instances with it, and I tend to think that gun control subconsciously is not gun control, like freedom of being able to access guns is part of this. There's a big part of the American psyche that's all around just basically believing that the government is against you, and that,
well, yeah,
and that you should, and you need to be prepared on a sort of Minutemen militia level, ready to take on anyone, whether it's the Taliban or ISIS or the U.S. government when you're a U.S. citizen in America.
Yes, you raise a really great point. But so does that not add to my point, which is that American culture is kind of predisposed to believe that their own government are their actual enemies?
Yeah. But what about that?
Well, in that it aligns nicely with this theory that 9/11 was an inside job.
Oh, yeah, it aligns super nicely. Yeah. For sure. They are definitely nicely skipped down the path together. And I think people I can imagine people probably fell into one of two camps. One camp was that they had more trust in the government, and this did feel very real and therefore very terrifying. And therefore they would be open to wars that maybe they hadn't been open to before, or funding the military in ways that people hadn't been overly supportive in the same way before. Or you went down the road that you think the government is lying and it's an insider job, and it's another reason to have a gun.
Yeah.
And to be prepared, to prep for the end of the world.
Yeah, I suppose we had this dual thing of the end of the world was coming because Islamic terrorism was this. I don't think we'd ever really considered it in the same way. Now, it's a regular talking point. It's a thing that we're aware exists, even though it may be controversial to talk about how impactful it is. We're not going to derail this conversation with that, but the concept of Islamist terror is quite normalized now, whereas it wasn't then. So you have the worry of kind of foreign terror attacks on the West, whilst at the same time the worry that America's rage will be so all-consuming, it will just all be nuked off the planet, essentially. So actually at either end was contributed to this sense of we've just had the millennium. Oh, peace and love for everyone. Oh, we're all going to die.
I know. Also, for the record, I know the Taliban was not behind, apparently not behind those things.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't dive into it. I just want to sound like a moron.
Oh, okay. But, yeah. There's a great podcast called Conflicted, if any of you guys want to listen a little more. So I came across Conflicted through a podcast series called The Spy Who. One series is on a spy who was an operative within Al-Qaeda. So he didn't directly work on 9/11, but he was in Al-Qaeda cells at the time. I cannot recommend it enough. It's really interesting, and it gives a kind of other perspective. So he was obviously a kind of, he signed up to join.
Yeah.
And then over time realized that he completely disagreed with the atrocities that were happening, the mindset of the people that he was with. And so he was flipped and spied on Al-Qaeda, within Al-Qaeda for the British government, I think. And in the end, actually, he was accidentally, quote unquote, accidentally outed by a CIA operative. So he had to flee. And I think he resides here now, and he does a podcast called Conflicted. So he'll discuss Middle Eastern politics and geopolitical politics from a Middle Eastern perspective, which is fascinating, really, really interesting. So if you're interested in any of that, then I really recommend those two podcasts. Yeah, it's just a kind of insider point of view into a group like Al-Qaeda from someone who was in it, because these were kind of the bogeymen that we grew up with. Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. I still have no idea what the difference between any of them are. I'm not sure anyone does. But that was definitely like the external fear.
Yeah. And I agree with you. It is like a lot more normalized now. But it's interesting that you bring up like the whole age of Aquarius and all that, because you obviously in the 1970s, before we were born, had a whole bunch of like end of the world cults as well.
Yeah.
Particularly in America, or ones that started in America and then...
Why is that a 70s thing?
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, clearly they thought the end of the world was coming too and signed up for it.
The 70s is a decade which gets a lot of glamorization that I have never wanted to live in. I mean, sure, the music is great, but other than that, cults, serial killers, you have this weird argument over the sexual revolution. Is it really great for women, or have you just allowed women to be sexually available at all times to men?
Yeah.
It just is this cultural moment that I'm terribly glad I was not around for. But for some people, it's like, oh, the 70s. Wouldn't you have loved to be alive in the 70s? No, I fucking would not, thank you. I suppose because our parents would have been in their teenagers in the 70s, whether that impacted our minds coming into the millennium, because that was their 90s, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. Do you think in the way of like that they had a part of them that believed that the end of the world might be coming, and they just like imparted that on us subconsciously?
Maybe. And like this hippiness, like this kind of predisposition to when they were young, you had again a similar, I think, interest in New Age philosophies and kind of trying to make society less conformative, rejecting institutions like traditional religion, government. Those were our parents' generation.
Yeah. I wonder how much a teenager now thinks the end of the world is coming. Or if it's just a repeat cycle.
Wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I can say that I was laughing because I was literally on the bus. As if that ever happens. I was in my Uber looking at like teenagers, the girls. I was looking at what the girls are wearing, and I was like, gosh, they look so 70s with their hair and their bell-bottom trousers. And then I had this moment where I was like, no, that's 90s. And I had just not connected that to the 90s replication of 70s fashion. And it was like, oh my God, 20 years, 20 years, 20 years. Nothing is ever new anymore. We're all living in this like recycled culture.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of young teenagers, but I am told young people are much more nihilistic than we were.
Interesting. I mean, I would be if I was them.
I would be too, but then I worry that they're sort of absorbing our age's hysteria over everything's just awful now. You open the internet and it's awful. Capitalism, awful. and maybe in our obsession with the end of the world, we've inflicted this sort of psychic damage onto young people, and we've killed their hopefulness and their joy.
I mean, I think we could be a little bit easier on ourselves.
No.
But I do know, and I know we're not going to touch on it for long, but, you know, that's a generation who also grew up with the pivotal moments in their lives being stuck indoors.
COVID.
For an elongated period of time. That's going to fuck with your psyche if anything is.
Yes.
if I could not leave the house, my biological family, and I do love you guys because I know you're listening, for 2 years, I think we all would have killed each other.
Yes. I suppose the difference between that and what we went through is that we could bond with each other in real life. And with the 70s, so we have our parents' generation, and obviously the developments in weaponry, the huge impact, the Cold War, they had their own, the world was going to end moments. There is a sort of theory that, like, I suppose, like you say, happens in America, it brings people together in some ways. You get solace from the idea of community because of the way COVID happened and the unique access that young people have to technology. It made them more isolated. And so I really feel for them for that, because you couldn't come together to get through something. You're engaged in this online world where we're being pushed further and further into this sort of half existence. I call it junk food life, this totally disembodied 2D low, what do they call it? Like low. So it's this idea that interactions in real life are harder. So it's harder to make friends in real life, but they're deeper and more meaningful. It's easier to make friends online, but the connections are all very superficial.
Yeah.
So you're constantly operating on a much more superficial level. And also where you have no nuance, you have no body language. Not only did those young people get stuck at home for months on end, it normalized for them, I think, a much more detrimental way of being in the world, where you're not in the world, are you?
Well, you put it like that, and like, I'm ready for the end of the world, man. I am ready.
Well, it's coming soon. It's the end of this world, and we'll be living in some meta Google AI hellscape.
I'll buy a ticket if I was selling it.
I just want to throw everybody's phone into the bin and be like, I'm sorry, you can't have Instagram, but trust me, in a few years, you'll be much happier.
Yeah. I wish I had done a little bit more digging into, like, I've read the occasional article on how the sort of billionaires of the world are preparing themselves for the end of days. But I mean, I did meet somebody actually who has a business building end of the world location. So like literally his company goes like builds these bulletproof, fireproof, like nuclear war-proof apartments that are underground, and you can live in for I think like up to 2 years, the level of oxygen and food that it can hold. And they're like 5-star hotels, basically.
What a never-ending joy capitalism is.
Amusing.
A podcast creator who I used to follow loads, now a little less, but he has some interesting things to say. Robert Evans. I did an episode on one of his shows on this subject, and it's really fascinating. But the only bit I can remember is that one of the concerns for one of these like multi-billionaire preppers was, how do we stop our like security staff and the people that we like hire to be our servants from like overthrowing us and killing us for our resources? And he was just like, well, you could treat them like human beings and look after them and their families. Maybe just a thought, like inspiration of like, how will we keep the servants in check whilst they're living in their underground hovels, digging us pots of caviar? Just what? Yeah, that sounds about right, doesn't it? Oh God, horrendous. So I had this thing when I was young that I, for some reason undefined, would never live into adulthood, and I think that's actually not uncommon. I used to think it was a weird thing that I had, and I've raised this with you before. I went on Reddit to try and find some information, and there's this whole Reddit stream of people being like, oh yeah, I totally thought I'd be dead by the time I was 27. Now, most people on that thread were also engaging in discussions about like depression and anxiety and having like trauma-based childhoods. And so for them, it was the only thing I could find was that it was a manifestation of trauma. There's a term for it. I don't remember, unless I've forgotten something from my childhood. was that traumatic for it to have this indelible mark on my psyche about not seeing myself aging into adulthood. Is this something you experienced at all or have heard of?
Yeah, no, I haven't heard it like defined in any kind of sort of scientific or psychological way. But yeah, no, definitely. I was convinced that I was going to die by the time I turned 32. And my reasoning for this was that, there was like a whole book that somebody bought me on basically how everyone great died by the age of 27.
Yeah, that's such a millennial thing, the 27 club.
Yeah. And all these examples of famous artists who had died or like self-combusted by the time they turned 27. And it was a very real thing. I had other friends who felt this way. I even had a boyfriend, one of the first loves of my life, who broke up with me because he was like, I know that I am going to die by the time I'm 27, which means I don't have long and I just need to focus on making my art. In 2020 hindsight, obviously, A, he's just not that into you, and B, he's a little crazy, so like steer clear anyways. But like, yeah. That was real.
Wow. Okay.
But I think
is he still alive?
He is, in fact. I think he's like alive and doing well in Singapore. But but I wonder if that's like an artist thing. I wonder if like,
do you think
those who are maybe like less right brain or like creatively minded, or as my fiance would call me, just crazy. Like if we if that there's like a part of that believes, because I think there's also this concept that, which I don't believe, but I think is pretty prevalent, that like you have this creative, you're super creative when you're young, and that's like the peak of your creativity, and then it just starts to expire.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes, I suppose so. I don't think you're more creative when you're young, but I think it's fair to say, like, puberty, your brain is just on steroids, like hormones, zip-zapping, everything else, like emotions are so heightened. Like, it's a period in your life that is unparalleled at any other stage of our development process, our aging. I'm not sure that gets talked about enough, or I suppose it probably does in educational settings, but not in the culture. Certainly when I went back and read some of my entries, I mean, they're very intense. Of course, they're like just these like swings between like the meaning of life and God, and why hasn't this boy called me? And I discovered this new way to paint my nails. But oh my God, I think we're all connected by love and ruminations on death and existence and whether we live forever and reincarnation.
So deep.
Yeah, it's so like pew, 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 pew. And I think some of that is very teenage. I don't know whether I was an unusual teenager. I think I thought a lot. I think I ruminated a lot. And I was obviously, creative, like you, a creative kid. Maybe all teenagers. Well, it's a teenage thing to be obsessed with death, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. No, that's true. And also, technically, your brain doesn't stop developing until it's 25.
It's
all that pew, pew, pew. Do you think you only have 2 years left?
Yes, that's correct. Only menopause was a time known for its creative vigor. I mean, I certainly feel like I've been dining out on the creative juices of my late teens and 20s, like till yesterday. It certainly drove the first like 10 to 15 years of my burlesque career. So many ideas. Like, it's so wonderful, but it's so painful when you're that age because life is so intense and no one believes you about anything and no one gives a fuck about what you have to say. You are completely powerless, but you're experiencing the world in the most intense way ever.
I don't think that I have any, I don't think I have less ideas than I did back then. But I think that back then I just didn't know I didn't know what went into actually achieving them.
Okay.
So I was either just emboldened to make it happen, or they just obviously didn't happen. Versus now I have a great idea and I'm like, it sounds so fabulous. And then I can see the 7 billion steps that have to be taken to actually do it. And I just get tired before I've even begun. Life is too short for that one. Off it goes.
No. You've just learned to be more discerning.
Yes, that's one way of looking at it. Now, getting back to the end of the world, what is your stance? Like, is there any part of you that feels like you have a need to prepare?
To end the world, no, to prepare for
beyond your cigarettes and your contraceptives.
I love the way you dismissively said that, as if that isn't a great plan. Yes, I did think
Peppa's business plan for the end of the year.
Yeah.
End of days, sorry.
The end of days. I like the overachieving, I was going to say head girl energy. I was not head girl, which will surprise many of you. I was not even a prefect, unlike you, I believe, who was a prefect. Or whatever you call it in America.
Captain of speech and debate team, president of the social club.
Of course. Of course.
Near president of the, I tried to run a coup to get the actual president of the student council kicked out, but
that's not surprising. So obviously I have my preppy head girl end of the world list. I mean, those of you who listen to me and Lolo and Jinsalt will know that a good 40% of every episode was us joking about the end of the world. I did think, though, that I need to learn how to drive. There are two reasons for this. One is non-apocalyptic, which is that. And so I can't drive. I didn't even know how a car works. You put me in a car, I wouldn't know what to do first, which is terrible, really. But driving in London is pointless and ridiculous and expensive and difficult and not necessary where I am. And I grew up mostly, by the time I got to my teenage years, I was in Oxford, which is a very car-unfriendly city. So we just no need to learn how to drive. So I just have no idea how to drive. My parents are getting older. My parents are the age of some of my peers' grandparents. And so I do sort of feel if something happened to them and I needed to get there quickly or I needed to drive them somewhere, it would be a good idea to be able to know how to drive, because I could literally be at their house in about an hour if needed, but not if I had to take public transport.
Sure.
And then, thinking about the end of the world. We need to learn how to jack a car and drive it.
Okay, I would just like to clarify that I have been driving for 20 odd years, but I don't know how to jack a car.
Well, put it on your to-do list quick, because you and I don't own cars in London. And, I'm not waiting for a fucking Uber, which is impossible to get at the moment anyway.
I love that there's like no real jump between like, it's difficult, the Uber keeps canceling on me, to let me steal this car from my neighbor and hot rodding.
Listen, have you not watched all of The Walking Dead?
No.
A significant section of that show is needing to steal cars and drive them places.
Oh, but speaking of stealing cars at the end of days, I mean, I was having a chat with some friends over the weekend who just bought a new car, which is electric and can only be opened by key card.
Oh, great.
Or by their phone.
Shut
Even
up.
if there was an end of days, and you own a car, half the cars in London you couldn't even drive anyways. There's no more, you could drive them, I suppose, sort of, but if your phone's gone out or you've lost battery, the car is useless.
God. Do you know, I am legit worried about the over reliance on tech that we have. So in a similar vein, my husband, who works in hospitality, was talking about they had some nightmare at work because the electric systems meant all of the payment systems were down. Now, back in my day, when I worked at a shop, when I was a shop girl, we used to have these click-clack machines where you would swipe a card and they would be embossed by the raised numbers on the cards. Cards do not have raised numbers on them anymore.
Oh my God.
So there is no way to take payment from people, and we live in a predominantly cashless society now, if we don't have our electricity, our tech systems running. I was just isn't this a huge oversight by banks? It is not. We are not living in a time whereby the notion that somebody could hack into our systems to try and, that's how warfare really is now, or a lot of it, isn't it? It's online stuff. There seems to be no protections for that. How are we functioning if all of our banking systems went down and we don't have money on us to pay for things, and all of those old-fashioned backup systems for taking payments don't work either? What's the backup for this?
Well, but I think also you can have a backup. I mean, I had totally forgotten that there's no more embossed numbers. There's that backup for that one instance and there's an electricity problem. But the bigger problem, I mean, doesn't matter how many times you can swipe that card.
You are right. It's not going to solve if all of our banking systems get totally liquidated into non-existence and we all lose our money. Then you'll want my contraceptive pills to hold.
But outside of even, somebody terrorizes us and liquidates everything and empties all our bank accounts, like there's just literally, it's now in this scenario where it's sort of too big to fail, which is never good. And, just the cloud could go down or the bank could go down. And I mean, Barclays Bank did go down, didn't it? Wasn't it Barclays? Went down for on payday. There was some sort of issue nationwide with the payment. So,
really?
Yeah. So anybody who had like these bank accounts, like they couldn't.
Oh my God, stop it.
Yeah. So for 24 hours, and it was madness. I don't know if it's Barclays. I should have, didn't think about that. But yeah, it was one of the major chains in the UK. And so then they ended up having to cover the costs of various things. So yeah.
Is anyone thinking about this?
Well, you certainly hope that there's like a whole department related to cybersecurity and making sure the thing, but also, again, and I'm going to sound like a bit of an idiot here, but I thought that a lot of the sort of like internet connections are just in wires under the sea, which means that somebody just go, I mean, not easily. I'm sure you can't, you can't just take a pair of scissors and like go cut them in half. But like, it's not infallible, right?
Well, oh my God, this is all terrifying.
Yeah, like it's something that could be broken. It is a system that could be broken, and we would be effed with a capital F.
Yes, where are our backup systems?
Yeah.
Are you prepping?
Not as much as I think somebody who's listening to this would think that I am.
Because you're American.
Well, because I clearly blame the governments against us and a bunch of other things. No, I mean, so yes and no. So we're looking at relocating outside of London. And, like part of my thought process is, should we be building a little space in our lawn so that we can, store cans and dried goods and all sorts of other things that'll hopefully last forever. Pina coladas, obviously, on bulk.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I think there's definitely a part of me. I would love to learn how to grow my own food. And,
this is convenient for your trad wife fantasy.
I know. But no, I mean, I don't want to have to rely on that, but I think it's just an interesting skill set. I think it's also just interesting that we, on the one extreme, there's only a handful of people in this country who can even thatch a roof still, which I realize is not part of like
all the things you choose.
But there's a lot of people who lived with thatched roof houses, and it's so expensive now because only a handful of people do it. But I think it's interesting that that's obviously like the extreme side. But on the day-to-day side, when I graduated high school, I still don't know how to change a tire on a car. I literally had a friend who went to the same university, and she asked me if I would show her how to use a laundry machine. I may have also gone to like a school which made us particularly adept, but the fact that you don't know, right? Like
that's fair. When I left home, I had to figure out how to use a laundry machine.
Really?
Yeah, my mother did all of the washing at home in a weird way because, she wanted zero help. That sounds convenient. But my mother did not like interference in realms that she considered hers, whilst passive-aggressively being annoyed about it as well. It's fine. She'll never listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
So yes, and I imagine it. I did have to be like, so is this button?
But I do think it's interesting just how much we take for granted is connected to the cloud, connected to computer, just connected, right? Is not in front of you around your day-to-day life and how you go about living it and what you eat and...
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree. If you dropped us all in the middle of the forest, we'd all die in about a day with no smartphones. But yeah, I think people probably used to be much better about, you can eat these things, but not these things. These things are poisonous. I remember when I was little vaguely learning a system whereby how you test whether food is poisonous or not. So you rub it,
take the person you don't like, give them the thing, and see what happens.
And what is wrong with that? Oh, no, I think it's like, so you rub it on your skin first. And if you don't have a reaction, you can then like lick it on your tongue. Like there's this whole process. So if you're stuck in a wilderness, you don't know what you can eat or not. That's about as much as I remember. So it's not going to save me. But yes, I think we are utterly unprepared for life without technology and survival. That's how we'll solve youthful depression. Gardening club. It's in the world. It's got a long-term beauty to it. You're learning practical skills. It's embodied. It's hopeful. There's a very cute sign at my local park which says, "To garden is to believe in tomorrow."
Oh, that's nice.
That was nice.
Very true. I mean, as I know you know about me, I believe that we could all die tomorrow and the world will keep on going. But I'm convinced humanity's day will end before the Earth's day. And I'm okay with that.
Yes, I do remember figuring that out and being like, oh, the world won't end. Will end. Got you. Okay, right. And some days it is hard to see the downside of that. You see, this is why young people are so depressed, because people our age say things like this to them. And I'm not sure it's filling them with the confidence and joie de vivre that I think they might have.
No, but you say that, but like my mom, she was born in the late 50s. So she was sort of, like a teenager in the 70s. And she signed a one-child petition. And it was all about this concept that, like, climate change was happening, the world was going to end. And so, like, one of the good things they could do was, like, only have one kid to make it a better place in the future.
Yeah, so and this is why we're all going off a population cliff.
But there's still
Thanks,
anxiety.
Judith. I'm joking, Judith. I love you.
Yeah, we are all woefully unprepared for what will happen.
I love the way you said what will happen. Cue our Alex Jones style pivot to selling you all prepping equipment, supplements and camping gear. Get ready.
Not a bad idea.
Well, people have made a lot of money off this industry, as you said. It's now multi-billion-dollar. Have you asked your parents about whether our obsession with the world ending is similar to theirs? Did they have an opinion on this that you know?
No, I don't. I mean, I know that like the end of the world still keeps my mother up at night sometimes. So I don't think she's like, let it go. And I haven't chatted with my dad about the end of the world. I think he probably takes a pretty pessimistic view on it. He takes a realistic view is how I think he and I would think about it, that the world will keep going. We won't. But I can't speak for him. I don't know. Have you talked about it with your Barry?
Not only in drips and drabs here and there. I remember when I was young, we were talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think we were learning about it at school. And one of my school friends said, oh, yeah, my mum told me. Would that have been the right generation? Yeah, I guess so. My mum told me that they like all hugged each other goodbye and stuff. Yeah, which seemed extreme given they were also not in America. But it had really internalized this feeling like we're literally living on the cusp of the world ending at any moment. So I went home to my dad and I was like, well, were you really scared during the Cuban Missile Crisis that you were all going to die? And he just looked at me and was like, no. I don't know where the realistic response to that is. I mean, my father's parents, both of my parents were war generation parents, and they were brought up in their different ways to be you were not hysterical about things like that and stiff upper lip and just like not given to flights of hysteria over kind of catastrophizing the end of the world, which I think is like, given that they actually lived, this isn't any shade on anyone else, it's just my parents' mindset through their parents lived through a period of like bombs falling out of the sky. I think their attitude can also be summed up. So London had its own terror attacks in 2004.
That's right, yeah.
The 7/7 bombings, which I was working in central London at the time. And the second one, so we had the big terrorist attacks. And then there were these kind of like drips and drabs, some of which I think was like attempts that were thwarted or times where people felt something was going to happen, but it was just everyone was in such a panic. Everyone was so scared. And I used to work in this restaurant in central London, and we'd connected that when the PDQ machines go down, that's them shutting down the internet to stop bombs being triggered. So we would have this time in particular, the second wave. Sorry, I wish I could be more specific about the details. I didn't realize we were going to talk about it, so I didn't double check. But those of you who were in London at this time would remember the period that I'm talking about where all of the systems went down. And so there's this feeling of like, oh my God, another attack is about to happen. And in the end, it wasn't. But it wasn't just us being concerned. It was like the whole of London was on super high alert. And the manageress at the restaurant at the time said, oh, if you guys want to call home and let your parents know that you're okay, or your families or your partners, we were all adults, then you can use the company phone to do that. Again, like we didn't have smartphones, I don't think then, or I certainly didn't. They were quite rare. I guess a lot of flip phone at the time, and free calls and stuff, WhatsApp, not a thing. So it might be the case that you would use the company phone rather than your own mobile phone. And everybody did this. So I was like, oh, I'm going to call my parents in case they're worried about me. And I literally rang the landline. And my parents was like, oh, hi, I just wanted to let you know that I'm okay. And my parents were just like, what? And I was like, oh, in London, we thought there was going to be an attack. And they were like, oh, that's nice, dear. Okay, we'll see you next Sunday. Bye. So that was really the dominating perspective of my childhood about stuff like this.
Oh, God. I mean, I do wonder, though. So my mom did tell me, she has told me in the past, around when she was growing up, obviously you had the Cold War for part of this. And it was so in the psyche, right? And they would do drills at school around what you would do in case of nuclear war, besides obviously just probably die.
Yeah.
But you were supposed to like get on your desk and these things that you do. And when I was growing up in California, you would do earthquake drills, right? Slightly different thing, but you would know what to do if an earthquake hit. But my friend is a teacher now of elementary school. So that's, sort of the ages of like 4 to 8, right? So kids, little kids. And they do gun drills.
Yeah.
So they learn what to do in case a shooter comes in. And you think of all the things we've talked about, you also just think, if you literally show up to school and you have to public school, like state school, and you have to, I mean, two different things in the US and UK, and you have to learn what to do. You know that you are being told as a 4-year-old, it's entirely possible, it's plausible, in fact, to the state that we think it's necessary to learn what to do, that you are going to be shot at in this school, this place where you're supposed to be like learning and your safe haven and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that in and of itself is going to be super destabilizing.
Yeah. It's not the end of the world, but it must have had a massive impact, again, on your psyche as young people. And thinking about it, because it wasn't on our list for this episode, but the beginning of all of that is 90s and noughties, isn't it? Do you know when Columbine was?
I don't remember the exact year, but it was early 2000. I don't remember exactly.
I can look it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so would you have had those drills?
No.
Really?
All of that came after.
So Columbine is 1999. Oh my God, so literally millennium.
Yeah. God.
Yeah. Again, like not being in America, well, you may or may not be surprised, but like that had such an impact, even here, where it's not normal at all. We don't have, I mean, thank God, high school shootings, school shootings, not by pupils, because of obviously the difference in gun control levels here. But still this idea that could happen and that you guys were having to start to live with that as normality to the extent that for younger generations, like you say, it's just in the school programming. But it's so strange to us.
I know, but I think when you think about sort of like nihilism and like of the younger generation and like whether or not just how we felt about this sort of end of world concept before and how kids feel about it now, I don't know. I just wonder if it plays into it. Because I never had the sense that there was any fear of the world ending before Y2K. And again, wasn't overly concerned at that moment of time.
There's a real loss of innocence around the millennium, wasn't there? Between school shootings and 9/11, which was massive. Everything that came after, just the idea, the change of the centuries anyway. We didn't have the school shooter thing, but we did have terrorist drills.
Did you?
Yeah. So fire drills at school, obviously, all schools have those. Because the IRA was such a big thing when I was young. I wonder if, so that was definitely like the idea of terrorism on home soil existed in the UK. You'd get a phone call first. I think everybody would go back to those days over the nightmare that came later. Not to minimize, obviously, the horror of that. I think we had terrorism bomb drills at my school, in particular when I moved to private school because of the parents of some of the kids.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. For example, I think one of them worked in quite a controversial strand of medical research at one of the Oxford colleges. So they had bomb threats to the school before.
Wow.
So we used to do bomb drills. I'm not trying to liken them to what happens with kids and school shootings. I think there's a special kind of horror, though, of a school shooting because that's one of your peers.
Yeah. I mean, I also really question the, I'm sure experts have looked into it, but really question the logic behind teaching children what to do when it's most of the time it's done by a student. So it feels quite like, what are we doing here? Do you know what I mean? Like,
there must be an impact, surely, on kind of the lack of trust at school when you are literally told relentlessly that one of your school friends or your peers might decide to kill you one day, and what that does to kind of your feeling of being somewhere where you can feel safe.
Yeah, it's a problem. Glad I'm not in America and not tackling it, but I hope somebody does. I mean, I feel like we've gone through a journey here on this podcast. It wasn't just about spam and baked beans and cans. Preparing for what's coming.
For about, well, literally until last month when we tidied it out, we had a little food hoard in the airing cupboard after COVID. Yeah. And that all got binned recently. Doesn't bode well. Because it all went out of date. It was oh, all of these endless cans of Patuk's curry sauce and baked beans needs to be eaten or go in the bin. We have not replenished our food resources.
It does make you wonder, though, because you always think canned goods, those are going to be the solution, right? But yeah, I'm the same way. Like when COVID hit, my mom sent me some cans from the, I mean, she didn't send them physically from the States. She bought some for me on Amazon.com.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And sent them to me. Yeah, but they all had to go in the bin recently. I worked my way through that pea soup.
Yeah, you sent me so much baked beans, pea soup, and tin spam one can eat. My mother-in-law was telling me that she remembers rationing. And I found this fascinating. I was like, yeah, Emma, I'm sorry, how old are you? And I hadn't realised for how long rationing had gone on in the UK post-war. But yeah, a really long time.
Yeah. No, I think it was Pip's dad, my partner's dad, who was telling me about when he was growing up and they'd get like the one sweetie that they could get a week. And that was like a real highlight, was going to the sweet shop because that was all you were allowed.
Yeah.
Now you can buy all the sweets you want.
Nothing special anymore. We need a good war to come back.
Careful what you wish for.
And show all of you ungrateful children what a great life you have.
Pretty sure war is coming, so speaking of ways in which the world might end.
Well, on that happy note, is there anything you would like to add?
Just my overwhelming fear that AI is going to obliterate us.
Oh, we didn't even. Yeah.
And I would really encourage everyone to dig deeper into that because it's coming.
I really encourage us all collectively, which none of us will do, to throw away our phones and start living a more embodied existence in the world. Reject the junk food of life that tech giants want to force you into so they can monetize your existence. And do some gardening. Yeah. Buy a plant pot. Because we're millennials, we don't have gardens.
Yeah. Buy a plant, buy a pina colada.
Yeah,
it's all going to be okay.